the Cases ladder. There were 4 of us that kind of co-founded it, and it was basically a ranking system. And I think in some ways it was like we wanted to play each other, but there wasn't any way to rank, right? There was no in-game ranking systems back then. And Case had originally kind of came up with the idea of having this kind of ranking system, and he was one of the players, Command and Conquer. So, we had played for a long time and we were friends, and then we started to bring these different elements together. I was kind of more the business person, Jeremy or Case, he was more the developer. We had Greg, he kind of knew servers. We had all these different elements that were part of it, and we started to bring them in. And then later on, Case's Ladder acquired Jay Severson's, who I believe you talked to as well, for those that watch the chess.com episode. He did tournaments, and so we had rankings and tournaments together. But it was crazy. We were literally doing this right out of college and our first startup, and it was just a ton of fun.
Yeah, back then I just remember, everything was done. This was right around that point where everybody was still kind of getting together either on one screen or a couple screens or a couple computers in someone's house, or right. And you guys were literally pioneering how to do this from different time zones, right?
It was crazy. I will say that the Cali program, that allowed to do those connections. We were more about the rankings and the tournament side of it, right? But
that was a big deal because everybody wanted to know who's the best.
Yes. Yeah, right? Totally. Right. And it was, the ladder system was ingenious because the way it worked is if you had 100 people on the ladder and you played the number one person and you won, let's say you were ranked 100, they were ranked number 1, you would move up half the distance. Okay. So you would go to number 50. And what it meant is people were always kind of hopping ahead of each other. So it really was a system that made you had to play a lot if you wanted to raise up that ladder. And there were just epic battles, and it was just a ton of fun.
And be willing to play someone who's technically far ahead of rank, right? If you really wanted to bounce.
Yeah. And a lot of times you just go into servers who was there and oh, you want to do, Cases match? Sure. Right. And you'd compete what rank are you? And then sometimes too, number 1 rank, you'd have to play everybody else, right? And sometimes people would get that and try to avoid playing people. I mean, there was just a lot of fun stuff that would kind of go into it, but it was a blast though.
Yeah, I wish I could say I did some of that when I was young, but I was literally I would play Command and Conquer, mainly Red Alert when it came out.
Yeah, sure.
I just play through skirmishes. I just jump in maps and try to meticulously move things around. But you guys were figuring out kind of how to game the games a little bit so to get competitive advantage and win. But that was kind of the real paper, scissors, rock about it, right?
Yeah.
Against somebody else.
I remember we were playing competitively, and you're playing people from all over. So you're just getting all these different strategies. And I remember at one point I was playing a friend I kind of knew, and he was at work, and he's like, oh, I play Command and Conquer, and we do lands, right? So we would just play each other. And all they had played was each other, right? They never played anyone else broader. And so he's like, oh, I'm pretty confident I could beat you, Bill, right? And so we go in there, and it was he just got eviscerated because you'd only played a couple other people. You had no idea of the different strategies that would come out of it. So, competitive gaming was a ton of fun early in the day.
Yeah, and that's shifted a lot. So with Cases Ladder, what came next?
After Cases, we got acquired there. It wasn't a huge exit, but we did, get some nice, side change for that.
Something that somebody wanted, right?
Yeah, you got it, right? Yeah. And the funny thing with Cases too was just one last little thing on that was the biggest pivot we made that ended up being huge for the company was we were in all these real-time strategy games that we loved, right? We were in Quake and Command and Conquer and StarCraft and all that. But at the time, those weren't as big. And a lot of times college kids didn't have that much money. Where we made a ton of money was the classic cards, right? So it was all these older demographics that were playing hearts and spades and pinochle. And we introduced rankings and tournaments and ladders in there.
Oh, really? That was in there. Oh yeah. Everybody was playing this because those were just on the systems, right?
Classic games, right? Yeah. And they were, and they worked with all these different online systems, but nobody had rankings and tournaments, right? And so we introduced gold, and it was a one-time payment. And then we said, oh, wow, people are paying this. Let's introduce platinum. And then it was a much higher payment, and it was monthly. And then they were still paying that. And we're like, well, what's next? We started too high in the precious metal. So we went to diamond, right?
Yeah,
and and people would get advanced, stats and records, and their name would have a little gold icon next to it.
So we have you guys to thank for all the shenanigans we have now in the world, right?
I apologize for that, but hey, it made the company profitable, and it helped with an eventual exit. So,
mission accomplished.
That was fun there. So anyway, after that, I moved over. I had one or two stops in between, but I went to IGN Entertainment. Which was a ton of fun. They brought me in to kind of lead up their marketing, to do a lot of the subscription side of the house, which I was really familiar with.
Hey folks, thanks for checking out this clip from the Business Line podcast. For more great clips, click here and click over here for full episodes.